Good morning, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of my For the New Republican video series. This one is going to be on equality and equity. So, equality basically means that everyone gets the same of something. Okay, now, I've always hated the term equality because it's too vague. It doesn't specify equality of what. If we ask for equality of outcome or equality of opportunity, they're two completely different things that are opposites. If you're telling me that you want equality of outcome, then that means that's basically what communism is striving for. And the problem with that is that means that I can put in a lot of effort and I can work hard, but I'm not going to get any benefit from it. I'm going to get the same amount as someone who doesn't work hard. So that destroys the incentives for me to work hard. Equality of opportunity is something much better for us to strive for, but even that is kind of a pipe dream because everyone has different backgrounds, everyone has different life situations. If you look at my logo from my channel, it's called The Darwinist because I think the most fundamental fact of reality that people need to understand in order to form a political opinion that's worth a shit is natural selection. Natural selection is what happens when you have an environment and lots of different types of life forms, lots of different types of body shapes and thought processes and ideas and amounts of effort and amounts of courage and whatnot. We all make different choices in life, and that all leads to different outcomes. That's actually a good thing because that led to the wide variety of life that we have on this planet. You go back long enough, you had two animals that were the same. They could have been siblings. They came from the same litter, but one decided to climb a tree and one decided to go swim in the creek. And millions of years later, you got monkeys and you got whales. Decisions have consequences, good and bad consequences. So when we talk about equality in politics, you have to understand that when people are really vague about something or they don't go into explaining what that thing is, they're probably trying to manipulate you. Okay, you gotta develop like a hypersensitivity to manipulation and just be on the lookout for it, man. And that comes through vagueness. Equality is like, well, we need equality of the genders. Well, okay, and what? Well, they look at only the few areas that men, and only some men, might do better than the average woman. So they're not looking at the average man, they're looking at certain specific men, and they're comparing them to the average woman. Or race. They look at the average white person versus the average black person. Black people are more poor than the average white person. So that must mean there's an inequality to be solved, or income inequality. And they say that, well, not everyone makes the same amount of money, or whatever the hell people who cry about income inequality have a problem with. It doesn't make sense because in a free market, you're going to have unequal outcomes. You just will. Look at height inequality. That's a big deal. My cousin's 6'3". I had a friend that was 6'5". These guys would beat me in a game of basketball. Okay? I just don't have that advantage. And I mean, I'm not that great at basketball. But if we're going to go and say that, certain things need to be equal, well, you know what? Let's either try and force everything to be equal, or let's not do anything that's equal. Let's just let people be free and be different. Because some people are going to naturally gravitate towards something and master it. Some people are going to be a little decent at a lot of things. Some people are going to be lazy and not ever get good at anything. And if you try to assume that someone is doing worse than someone else only because of oppression, that's a pretty closed-minded, arrogant, unscientific way of looking at things. That's something I really hate about communism, is they call it scientific when they never run experiments and they never look at data. In fact, you show them any data that shows them explanations to the problems they're crying about, and they censor you or they call you racist. So, for example, the average black person or the average black family makes less money than the average white family. And the average white family makes less money than the average Asian family. Now, people that cry about black people being poor or oppressed or whatever, they like the people that complain about that income discrepancy. And here's the thing, most white people want everyone to be successful. We want everyone to be happy and wealthy enough, at least to where they can live a good life and provide for their family. We don't want anyone to be broke, okay? Especially if poverty causes crime, which is also not really true. I mean, it's kind of true, but not to the extent that Democrats think it is. It comes from choices that you make. Crime doesn't come from poverty nearly as much as poverty comes from crime. If I commit a bunch of crime in a society, I'm going to create poverty in that society. Just like the people that stole from me caused me to be more poor than I am now, because they literally stole valuable things from me. So, you know, my wealth was drastically lowered. So when you want to talk about solving inequality, there's actually multiple ways you can do it. The communist, the left-wing person, because they believe in the fixed pie fallacy, that is to say they believe that everything has a set amount, you cannot create new things, you can only redistribute things that already exist, which is obviously not true. Because they believe that, they assume that the only way to fix income inequality is to steal from people with more and give it to people who are poor. Or they assume the reason that people are poor and other people are rich is because they think that the rich people stole from the poor people, and that's not the case. At least not in the current day. It's just not true. So what we end up having is people who are not communists, who are probably either the target of this theft or see it for what it is, which is something that's absolutely not going to solve the problem, will look at that and say, you know what, there's other explanations for why certain people have less money, and it's because of the choices that they make. And then that, of course, will get you fired or censored or get your Facebook deleted or whatever. I mean, people who've been on the right wing and have been talking about things like this for a while, we've experienced every level of censorship that you can think. So, one big problem with censorship is if you have an opinion about a subject where certain opinions in that field have been censored, you don't actually have a real opinion on that subject. You have the opinion that has been given to you. You have the only kind of opinion that the powerful people have filtered into your brain, because they filter out everything that they don't want you to consider, and then they let you think that you have come to your own conclusion. You haven't. You've come to an approved conclusion that they have approved for you. So when it comes to equality, understanding why are we unequal, the truth is people have different strengths and weaknesses. It's like when you play Tony Hawk or an RPG of any kind, really. I'll use Tony Hawk. In Tony Hawk, you pick different skaters, and they're based on, real skaters, but each skater will have different strengths and weaknesses. One might have a lot more balance, another might have a little bit more speed, another might be able to jump higher, whatever. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. And that's the same in reality. I mean, just look at people that you know. Do you think you're all the same exact IQ? Do you think you all have the exact same work ethic? Do you think you all have the same physical ability? Let's say you want to be, skilled laborers. If someone's stronger, they're probably going to be a better carpenter than someone who's weaker. What about models? What about inequality in the privilege or the benefits or opportunities that women have from modeling? Which is they can make a lot more money than men can in modeling. They're especially in any kind of, sex-based industry, women have a huge advantage over men. That it's a lot harder for me to get an OnlyFans and make $40,000 a month than it is for a pretty girl to. Where's that complains about inequality there? It's kind of something that people assume that Marxism is the explanation for previous inequalities and current inequalities instead of anything else. They shut everything else off the table and they say, no, it's got to be Marxism. And of course, that's not true. Any thinking person knows that that's not true. So the problem is people that complain about inequality, you're complaining about a non-issue. Now, something even worse than inequality. And you know what, let me point something out too. We do want to bring people out of poverty and to fix problems, but everything is solved on a case-by-case basis. One person is poor for a different reason than the other person is poor. There's not one big solution that fits everyone. But there's certain things that are good general rules. Like, I think, I forgot who it was that said it. And, all these videos are just me spitballing on my way to work. But basically, you've got three main rules that will predict whether or not you're poor. And it's like 90% accurate. Don't have a kid out of wedlock, graduate high school, and keep a job for a year or longer. I'll also say don't commit crime, don't join a gang, find your strength and stick to it, try and monetize it, keep kind of working your way up through your jobs and get a new job. If it's, if another place is paying a little bit more, go apply, try and get hired at a place that pays a little bit more money and look for side gigs or whatever. There's inequality when it comes to dating ability. Some men get all the girls. And a lot of men get no girls. So what do? Well, work on your physical appearance, work on your grooming, get a nice haircut, hit the gym, learn to socialize, develop a personality, be charismatic. If you're on dating apps, get off of the dating apps. There's ways to improve your life besides we need communism, we need equality, we need the government to come solve our problems. Because like I said in the video yesterday about economics, when you ask the government to solve problems, you open up a can of worms that just has so many problems, dude. Because A, they have no incentive to solve the problem hardly. B, they only have one solution usually, and they're usually pretty inefficient at it. And honestly, Trump has been the most effective president when it comes to actually solving problems that we've had in several decades. I think that's one reason why it's gotten all the crazy communists to come out of the woodwork. I think when I think of communists and any sort of subversive ideology, when they start protesting violently, rioting, they start attacking people, killing people, that's either because they're emboldened or they feel entrapped and like they're losing and they're scared. So it's, it could go either way. Now, the even more dangerous side of equality, the people that complain about equality, is, and my profile pic, don't equality me, bro. That's because equality is usually the thing that people complain about or they're trying to fight for when the mass graves start being built, when the firing squads start getting lined up, when the gulags start opening up. They say equality and they really are calling for blood. Equity is basically stealing from certain people to give to other people. That's all equity is. Equity is just another form of communism. The problem with equity that people either just skips their mind, they assume it's okay because their moral compass tells them to give to the poor and impoverished and oppressed and all that. First off, these people are not oppressed. They're not impoverished from anything that I've ever done or anyone that they think has done them harm. Poor. First off, I grew up poor, and I've been harmed by poor people way more than I have by rich people. Rich people have never really hurt me. I'm talking about people that are actually making their own money, have their own businesses. They've never hurt me. It's always been other poor people that stole from me or attacked me or whatever. So like, and it's the same for most poor people. And that's not just because of proximity, that's because of mindset. Same with rich people. Most rich people who have been robbed or beat up, it's been by poor people. And poor people aren't more violent. Violent people are more poor. So wealth, prosperity is downhill of morals and behavior. Now, when we come to equity is, Harvard doesn't have that many black students, so we need to lower the SAT scores requirements for black students and raise the SAT score requirements for white students. Let's give jobs to black people before we give them to white people. And that means lowering standards for black people to get into jobs and raising standards for whites and Asians to get into jobs. Which means if you get on a plane with a black pilot, he probably is not as good of a pilot as the white pilot. Not because he's black, but because of equity. Because they hired him, that he had lower standards to get in. Same with a doctor. If you have a black doctor and he got into medical school based on equity, he stole that position from a white doctor, from a white guy who was more qualified, or at least could have. We don't know. He could be smarter than everyone else in the school, but his standard is lower. Like if I was racing Usain Bolt, I'm going to shock a lot of you, but I'm slower than Usain Bolt. If I wanted to get into a foot race with Usain Bolt and I said, okay, Usain, we're going to race. You have to run a mile, but I have to run 10 feet. Go! I'm going to win that race, okay? He cannot run a mile faster than I can run 10 feet. But that does not mean I'm faster than Usain Bolt, okay? That means that I cheated. DEI, equity, is cheating. If we want to get rid of inequality and prejudice and all that bullshit, we can only do it through actual equal opportunity, not what they call equal opportunity, but something called a merit-based system or meritocracy, which is where the jobs go to the best qualified. That's the only way to defeat DEI and all that shit. And here's the funny thing. This is where the race realists, the white nationalists, and all those people that have been censored off of Facebook and YouTube and places, they're right on this one, because there are companies where white people believe in meritocracy. There was a company, a tech company, where they hired an Indian guy. It was owned by white people. And it's not like they said, we're a bunch of white people, they just so happened to be white. And some Indians applied for the job and they saw that they had good skills, and so they hired him. The Indian rose up through the ranks, and once they got power, they fired all the white staff and hired only Indians. So if one race is playing the meritocracy game of let's all be equal and, treat everyone the same, but all the other races are not doing that, they're having racial preference, then the one race that's actually doing the right thing, the meritocracy, they're the ones that are going to get screwed. And so that's why equity is the number one reason that white people, or not the number one reason, but it's one of the main good justifications for white people to actually be racist. Because if we don't prioritize ourselves over other people, then they will prioritize, they're prioritizing themselves over us no matter what. And they're going to want to steal from us no matter what through DEI and equity. So, look, if that bothers you, then you should really be angry at the people crying for equity, the people that want the SAT scores to be lower, or the SAT requirements to be lower for blacks to get into college than for whites. Because, we tried having equal rights and equal opportunities and stuff for a year, and it quickly devolved into, we need special scholarships for people of color and shit like that. And so I would love to live in a merit-based society, but I don't even know how to do that, because so many other races will give preferential treatment to themselves over white people. And if we really need to just figure out a way to foster that mentality everywhere for people to really treat each other based on merit, at least in jobs and things like that, or else we do need segregation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So that's what I think about equality and equity. Most conservatives don't even consider race-based segregation or anything. They don't want that. Most conservatives, especially the Christian conservatives, don't want that because in their mind, we're all equal under Jesus. I'm a bit more extreme than most conservatives and Republicans in that I say, okay, look, either we're all equal or I'm on the top, okay, and my people are on the top. Sorry, your choice. You want a race war or you want equality? If you want a race war, well then I know which side I'm on because I can't be on your side by definition. I have to be on my people's side. I have to. Your skin color is your uniform. That's true regardless of what you believe about race. If there's like that black guy that murdered Irina on the train, he didn't ask her before he murdered her, hey, do you support BLM? He just saw a white chick and murdered her and they said, I got that white girl. So you got to kind of understand that actions have consequences. Conversations and talks and things that people, talk about, they have consequences. If you want to sit here and say that black people have been oppressed by white people, you're really giving white people two options. White people can either say, look, we're going to try and make everything as equal as possible, where we make sure that no one's being oppressed. That's option one. Or option two is you pick a fight with them. You pick a war with them, and to be honest, you'll lose. If white people wake up and decide one day, look, we need to take a race war seriously, white people will wipe the floor with everyone else, at least in our own countries. At least in America and Europe, no one else really stands a chance against us. Look at how things have been in the past with, it's kind of like the saying, white people are really nice until we're not. White people, like the Germans, let's talk about that for a second. They would have won if it wasn't for other white people. White people lost to white people. White people have never lost to anyone else. If you think so, Vietnam, okay, that's a good point. But that was, really effective guerrilla warfare. Afghanistan, and I'm getting off on a tangent. Basically, you can either have a race war or you can have equality. Almost every white person wants equality, and we've always been extending olive branches, and then all this black on white murder has been just swept under the rug. The news doesn't talk about it. And we're seeing a thing called black fatigue right now, which is white people that have been trying their hardest not to be racist, and then they see black people just spit in our faces, murdering us, getting away with it, laughing about it, calling for our deaths. And it's like, look, man, we've done the best we could by you. And I at this point, I don't give a shit what happened to your ancestors, man. You either got to get out of the country or straighten up. That's about all. The right-wing beliefs on everything is about consequences and personal responsibility. And if we want to be equal, then act equal, treat us just as you treat each other, or fuck off. Thank you. Bye.